is all about cozy comforts, but when you're prioritizing your health, it's easy to feel like you're missing out. With Hero Bread, you can enjoy all your fall favorites because they're made with Hero Bread sliced bread loaves, tortillas, bagels, dinner rolls, and more. Try their all-new Hero Noodles with 12 grams of protein and just 80 calories. You won't believe Hero Bread's options have 0 to 5 grams net carbs and are high fiber from the taste and texture. They've even got small batch drops of indulgent favorites like the popular Hero Croissant. And right now, Hero Bread is offering 10% off your order. Go to hero.co and use code FALL25 at checkout. That's FALL25 at HERO.co. All figures are per serving of Hero Bread. Contains 2 to 18 grams of fat per serving. See the product nutrition panels on hero.co for more information.
The new Wegovy pill is now available through Weight Watchers. Powerful GLP-1 results in a simple pill at the lowest price available. And with Weight Watchers, you can get doctor support and personalized nutrition programs. See if you qualify at weightwatchers.com. Ad not reviewed or approved by Novo Nordisk.
Oh, no. This is a logbook entry from the 15th of May, 1997. Caller rang. 16-year-old man, very gay positive and confident about sexuality. Parents and some friends know and support him. A school friend is threatening to beat him up as he found out he was interested in him. Caller very afraid and getting low, although still maintains confidence about being gay. He's decided to tell other people about it, maybe even the school, as he's worried an attack could involve more than a black eye. He will probably call back, as he asked if he could. Try to keep his confidence high.
You're listening to The Logbooks, untold stories from Britain's LGBTQ+ history, in partnership with Faber Books.
I'm Tash Walker.
And I'm Adam Zmith.
Since we finished making the Logbooks podcast in 2022, we've been writing a book published by Faber. It's called The Logbooks, and Adam's turned 40.
You too!
I don't look it though.
The book goes deeper into Switchboard's archive and other archives, and includes more stories from the 70s, 80s, 90s and noughties. 4 decades!
Listening to queer people's essential stories is always central to our work.
So in this season of the podcast, we want to share some of the interviews we conducted as research for our book.
Now you too can listen to all the amazing, powerfully queer storytellers we've listened to in their own words, with their own voices.
Hello Tash, who have we got in this episode?
Well, Ad, you're using your arms a lot today.
I know, I'm waving around.
That's
you've
fine.
got to gesticulate.
Nice. It's important.
It's energy for the mic.
Many modes of communication.
Yes.
Today we have got Ruth Turner, who is someone I met volunteering at Switchboard a long time ago when I joined back in the day. And Ruth is a really amazing person. She's an important person to me. I looked up to her a lot. She used to be a teacher. She's got this really wonderful, gentle manner, loves gardening, like me, has a cat called Eddie.
Oh, hi, Eddie.
Oh, Eddie's
Shout
so
out
sweet.
to Eddie.
And every time I go to see Ruth, there's always some kind of cake that I'm given. So if you hear any muffling of
in
sorts,
the interview?
Yeah, either my tummy's grumbling because I'm yet to eat the cake, or there might be a slight sort of cake mouth vibe.
Great.
Always delicious though.
It's funny, isn't it? We noticed when we were doing the interviews for the podcast and then going into doing the interviews for the book, coming out from Faber Books, in partnership with Faber Books, we noticed that there were some interviewees that we kept returning to, and we just felt ourselves drawn to them personally because we had a bit more of a connection, or because we just noticed that they always had lots of stories that we knew were really valuable and interesting. And maybe Ruth Turner is one of those people.
She certainly is. She's incredibly reflective. And yeah, like you say, over time, we end up building these relationships with them too. So they're our interviewees, but they also become our friends.
Great. Let's listen to Ruth.
Yes, hi, my name's Ruth. I'm a volunteer at Switchboard and I joined in 1996 until the present day. And in fact, I did a shift this morning.
Yeah, you're just telling me about the shift that you did this morning.
Yes.
And how you took a call which felt like a once in a year sort of call.
Yes, one of those memorable calls where I really felt I made a difference. And the caller was very grateful, which is always nice, particularly as at the moment things can sometimes feel a bit difficult as a volunteer.
Well, because we were saying that the world feels like nothing's working at the moment. Everything's sort of coming to boiling point in a way, especially with the different parties, conferences that are happening at the moment, and certain videos and rhetoric that's coming out of it. And I asked you if it felt like it did in the 80s, because I know lots of comparisons are being made to that time at the moment. Strikes, cuts in benefits, particular marginalised communities being targeted, battening down of the hatches when it comes to immigration. It feels quite familiar. I don't know whether you agree with that.
Yeah, I think we need to learn from the past, and if we think of the future, we can't take for granted that things, all the benefits, the hard-won benefits that we're grateful to have, we can't assume that everything is always going to be as good as it is or as good as it was, because certainly at the moment, the dog whistle politics and the right-wing rhetoric is making it feel as though minority groups are being bashed, disabled people are being penalised, benefits, so they're talking about taking benefits away, and trans people are being increasingly persecuted, marginalised. It's grim. It's grim, it's depressing. And it could be another year until the general election.
But we're there at Switchboard answering the calls, right? And that's what you did this morning on your shift.
I think when things get bad for us as individuals, it helps to remember that things have been bad before.
Yeah. That you're not the only one.
Yes.
I remember interviewing someone for the first season of the logbooks, and she was talking about the custody battles in the 70s and 80s, and she was able to access legal aid, and the complexity of having to come out in order to keep custody of her child at a time where you could lose your job. You know, homophobia was part and parcel of daily life, which arguably it probably is still for some people, and, you know, transphobia and biphobia. But she ended up winning custody of her child, and she said that no matter what happens to her now, she knows that she got through that, so she'll be able to get through anything, which always gives me pause for thought.
You learn so much more from the hard times and the difficult times.
Yeah, you learn who you are, I think. Okay, so I got the pleasure of having chatted to you for 2 seasons of the logbooks. I think it was the second and the third. And so, yeah, I wanted to know how you found that, and how was your experience of being interviewed by me, trusting me. Yeah, how did that feel, first off, for you?
Well, it was delightful, Tash. So it was a privilege and it was an honour, and it feels fantastic to know that I'm part of that project and part of the history of Switchboard. So yeah, it was humbling. It was fabulous. So absolute pleasure and a joy. I was delighted to be part of it.
How did it feel talking about those parts in history, some of which I know that you hadn't reflected on, maybe since they had happened because of the complexity of them. How did it feel going back there?
Quite difficult. Yeah, we talked a little bit about that earlier, that not raking over or digging up the past, but yeah, some of it was difficult because it wasn't all positive. And for me, thinking about my 20s and my 30s and living through Section 28 and establishing my career, working in education, when everything to do with being gay and homosexuality was difficult and troubling. Yeah, it wasn't really something that I would have thought about or spent a lot of time reflecting on. Maybe it was a good thing to do it for the logbooks. But yes, it wasn't a time of great optimism and hope and free thinking and outward lookingness. It was about keeping your head down and not being your authentic self. So that's a difficult thing to think about, really.
And go back to, I suppose. Did it reawaken certain feelings from that period of time for you?
Not really, because I live in the present and I'm always thinking about going forward and the next thing and what is next. But it saddens me that when I was in my prime in those years, that I wasn't able to be my authentic self. And when I think about what perhaps I could have done and the role model that I could have been, that's a shame. But I don't dwell on it too much.
Yeah, maybe think about the role model you are now. For definite. Yeah, 100%. How did it feel? How did it feel having other people hear your stories and listening back to it? I'm assuming that you listened to the podcast. How did it feel listening back to that yourself and also, that, I guess, tapestry of other histories that were happening at that time?
No one ever likes hearing their own voice debate, so there's that for a start. But no, it was wonderful. And I hadn't really given much thought to what it would mean for other people to hear me. So yes, I'm still not really quite used to it if I hear it again. And it's wonderful that it's there forever. It's amazing. And I think speaking about things makes them more real.
Adam and Tash here.
We wanted to tell you about our book.
It's called The Logbooks, Voices of Queer Britain and the Helpline That Listened.
And it's filled with more stories from Switchboard, our podcast contributors, other archives, and even the pair of us.
The Logbooks is published by Faber Books, and you can order it now at linktree.com/thelogbooks. For me personally, interviewing you was quite special for a number of reasons. One, I think I remember you as being one of the first people being on the board at Switchboard. And, the numbers of people who weren't like white cis guys were pretty low. And I remember you and I remember joining the board and you being on the board. And I thought you were so wise and had such a calm but like gentle manner. You seemed to hold a lot of thought in what you said, and I really respected that for someone who had such a buzzing brain that couldn't seem to sit still. So I really looked up to you and have continued to look up to you, and getting to know you more and your life and interviewing you for the podcast has been just wonderful. And then in addition to that, hearing your experience of being a teacher and hearing that side of Section 28, which I didn't understand fully until I started to meet those people who were in those positions. But having had been on the other side, having been that student who tried to talk to a teacher who needed a teacher to be there for them, it really helped me to understand the other side of my experience. And I'm really grateful for that. And it's just completely changed my whole attitude around what Section 28 was. I felt a lot of anger, I think, when I was younger around it, because I didn't get it, I didn't understand. Section 28 was doing exactly what it wanted to. It was censoring my experience to the point that I didn't understand why they were doing it, which is exactly why it was in place, right? So, yeah, thank you for helping me progress around that. I still haven't spoken to the teacher at school who I reached out to, but I'm going to reach out to them.
Oh, wow.
And see if I can talk to her for the book.
Oh, that would be amazing.
Yeah. I don't know if she'd be up for it, but...
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, I guess having spoken to you feels like, it's not exactly the same, but it feels almost like a test run, because hearing your experience and knowing mine and understanding what it was like for you from listening to you, I'm really grateful for. So thanks, Ruth.
Wow, that's so interesting. Gosh. Yeah, it's really interesting that you were on the other side of it. Really interesting. So it's made you reflect as well.
100%. Yeah. Obviously, part of the experience that you and I had was our conversation as part of the logbooks, which was an intergenerational conversation. So we're thinking a lot in the book, or we would like to think a lot about the importance of those and this idea of queer ancestry. So that the majority of people who are LGBTQ+ are born into a family that cannot show them the world and tell them what the world is going to be like. So there is always a sort of blank beginning where you just have nothing but yourself and your own understanding. In the majority, obviously, some people have queer parents. And that is quite a unique thing for a marginalised or oppressed community to experience. And so out of this comes this wonderful experience I feel like I've had in doing this work and being at Switchboard as well, is that I'm connecting my dots and being connected to my queer ancestors through conversation of those living and also those whose words I read in the logbooks or whose stories are retold by the volunteers. And I wanted to know what your experience is of that and your thoughts around intergenerational conversations, relationships with younger and older queer people, and what experiences you have of that already today and also when you were younger.
Yes. I mean, I think my reason for joining Switchboard was probably because of living through those years of Section 28 and not being able to find expression within my world. I wasn't on the gay scene. I didn't go... I used to go sort of dancing and clubbing, but not really drinking, and certainly not to sort of meet people, because I was quite absorbed in my career, building my career, where everything was suppressed and inauthentic. And so joining Switchboard for me in 1996, I think, was a reaction to the inauthentic life I was living, and therefore coming across all sorts of amazing volunteers at Switchboard, and meeting people from so many different backgrounds, and people of all different ages, people like Dudley Cave, lots of people that I can think of who I'd never have come across as a school teacher in South London. So I had some amazing conversations there. And I think I said to you earlier, I bitterly regret not being able to have those intergenerational conversations with the young people that I worked with. And although I was able to an extent through the curriculum, I was never really able to be my authentic self with young people. And I regret that. And I will always regret that because of what we lack. I was living that. And there was a lot of homophobia as well. That homophobia within the school, and some homophobia was directed directly towards me, and I lived that and I experienced that. And that was very painful, but it was dealt with properly and adequately.
By the school?
Yes, it was. And it was dealt with because it breached equal opportunities commitment that everybody had made. And so it was dealt with, and it was tackled as if it was a racist incident. I was lucky that I worked in a school that was part of the ILEA, the Inner London Education Authority, so it had very strong commitment to equal opportunities, but still sexuality was not really part of that because of Section 28. So everything was difficult, and I regret that.
Yeah, I'm thinking about how complex it is when you were in your 20s when you started teaching, and you were already out prior to that in your life?
In as much as, well, yes, I was really, because I was having relationships with women and my family knew.
Yeah.
And so the significant people in my life knew.
Yeah.
I made no attempt to hide it.
Yeah.
I was living my life, but yes, I had female partners.
Yeah. To then have an experience of having it not be a choice to just be silenced within school.
Yeah, I was out to my colleagues, or the important colleagues.
Yeah.
And I worked with other gay teachers, but they, like me, we were all in the closet with our young people. It wasn't part of the curriculum, nor were we allowed to talk about it, nor were we allowed to talk about AIDS and HIV.
Yeah.
And I think I spoke to you about it when we were recording the logbooks. Somebody actually said to me, "No, we can't talk about it, Ruth. It's against the law."
Yeah, I remember you telling me.
And it was only the lovely enlightened librarian who used to sneak books in. So there were books, but there was certainly there were no pride clubs or anything like that. There were no displays of LGBT fiction or anything like that. It was just it was underground. It was all hidden.
All praise librarians.
Yeah.
What was I going to say? Oh, yeah, so... It must feel and must have felt quite, I don't know, you tell me, to start to then create those intergenerational relationships with younger people, especially because you've had that experience as a teacher in not being able to be your true authentic self with the younger generations.
Yes, and certainly as my teaching career progressed, it was then easier to talk about LGBT issues. And towards the end of my career, certainly it was completely explicit, and we were talking about gender and sexuality and so on with older children. But it's night and day from the start of my career to the end of my career is literal night and day. I cannot begin to imagine what it would be like being in a classroom right now with all the shouting and screaming and vilification of the trans community. I cannot begin to imagine how difficult that must be to deal with in school. Yeah. But that's another conversation.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I wonder what it must have felt like pre-Section 28 to be in the classrooms and hearing all of the vilification and the media hostility around homosexuality in the run-up to the law passing. The echoes are heard in the schoolroom walls.
We're all products of where we've come from and who we've been with and who has come before. It's hard to see yourself within that continuum, but through doing the logbooks with you, I suppose it's made me realise that I am part of that. I was part of the response to the Admiral Duncan bombings, and that was traumatic. So I've lived through some of those deeply dark, awful times, and I would put now as that. Now is a deeply dark, awful time. so many mental health problems that, you know, people are not being able to get help with. So yes, I don't feel any individual legacy. I feel part of a collective legacy of those people that lived and worked through Section 28, who lived through the AIDS crisis. So a part of a collective legacy, I suppose, for the future.
A collective responsibility, which in itself is kind of how Switchboard works, doesn't it? If you think about it outside of, well, if we look at it as, you know, within Switchboard as a microcosm, yes, we're talking about a bigger collective, like legacy and community that have experienced and witnessed and sometimes suffered and lived through, and not always, all of these things in history that we're looking at. But Switchboard itself is a really fascinating example of this, I think, because it is this consistent, it's a constant. Switchboard is a constant, and it has been for nearly 50 years next year. But in that time, who is in Switchboard and who is made up of Switchboard, just like a human body, come and leave and change, sometimes come back again, constantly evolving, constantly pushing, constantly challenging. So that Switchboard, this concept, this character of Switchboard has a legacy, that it lives on and constantly evolves to always hopefully be there and have a legacy until it's no longer needed. Why do you think you still volunteer at Switchboard?
I can't really imagine not volunteering. It's an honour and a privilege to be able to speak to people. It still staggers me that somebody could ring up and share, you know, the most painful things that are happening to them. It keeps me connected with people. It is phenomenal, really. I can't imagine not doing it. And I equally, I can't imagine Switchboard not being there.
Yeah.
Is that some sort of utopia where everybody would be treated equally and there'd be no phobias of any kind? Through the logbooks, is that you've epitomised and exemplified those points in LGBTQI history that we can pinpoint and that we know are part of our queer journey. And as we were saying before, if we have been through these times, we can get through these times right now. We can acknowledge that these are difficult times, but we can look forward to a brighter future. And we have to remain optimistic. We have to believe that there is a brighter tomorrow, and it's not always going to be like the dog whistle, right-wing rhetoric that we're living through now. That it isn't normal. We shouldn't have to put up with it. It will get better. Things will change. We've done it before. We can do it again.
I think I could listen to Ruth reflect all day long.
I love how when you ask her a question, she will always pause.
Yeah.
And there's no urgency because she's thinking. You should think before you answer questions. I never do, but
no, that's so true. I think she's just got a great manner, just so thoughtful. Like Ruth Reflects is a podcast.
Oh my God,
half of it would be silence where she's thinking. And that's not shady. Like, that's great. We should all think a lot more. So I loved hearing her as well at the end when she says how, you know, things will change. Like, it's difficult right now for a lot of queer people, for lots of different kinds of people. But, you know, she's got that energy as our elder of being like, I've been through things and we as a community have been through things and we've made things change for the better before and we can do it again. So I think that's something to really hold on to. It's not kind of pat or like flat to say like, oh, just cheer up, things will be okay. That's not what she's saying. She's saying like, you know, keep working and, you know, believe that things can be better. And I don't know, coming from her, that's really strong, I think.
She's lived it.
Yeah.
And therefore you believe it.
Yeah.
And Ruth in particular is quite an important person to me as someone who came out at school when I was like 15, and her being a teacher throughout that period of time. I think it was complicated back then. I think both of us found it complicated. We didn't know each other. And in meeting Ruth again through Switchboard and then coming to know her a lot more through interviewing her, there's been a soothing, I think, for both of us when we look back at our past and how complicated it was.
And we won't say very much more about that.
No spoilers.
But you write about it really beautifully in the book. So, thanks for sharing that story in the book and for sharing Ruth with us, because it was great to hear from her. Yeah, such a pleasure. And of course, the book is out with Faber, and this podcast is made in partnership with Faber Books. So do check out Faber members. Faber Books is free to join program of events and online content. And of course, you can keep following Aunt Nell's stuff. We've got various events. Tash and I have got some book events coming up, and we've also got other like community workshops and things like that that we're doing. So, and also our Patreon. Did we mention our Patreon?
I don't think we did.
Where you can get exclusive content from us. Bonus content. Of the logbooks. So have a look at auntnell.com and also have a lovely evening wherever you're doing. And don't forget our Instagram at auntnell_. Yeah. The Logbooks is an Aunt Nell production in partnership with Faber Books. It is hosted and produced by Tash Walker and Adam Zmith. The voice of The Logbooks is Serena James. The assistant producer is Marnie Woodmeade. Engineered by David Pye. Music by Tom Foskett Barnes. Original artwork by Natalie Doto. Thanks to Steph Dickers and team at the Bishopsgate Institute. Our publisher, Faber Books. The dreamboats at Acast. The staff and volunteers at Switchboard, and all the contributors who shared their stories. Switchboard continues to take phone calls from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. every day. If you're affected by any of the issues in this podcast or need to discuss anything to do with your gender identity or sexuality, you can call Switchboard on 0800 0119 100. Email hello@switchboard.lgbt or instant message via switchboard.lgbt, where you can also donate money or time to help.
AI is transforming customer service. It's real and it works. And with Finn, we've built the #1 AI agent for customer service. We're seeing lots of cases where it's solving up to 90% of real queries for real businesses. This includes the real-world complex stuff like issuing a refund or cancelling an order. And we also see it when Finn goes up against competitors. It's top of all the performance benchmarks, top of the G2 leaderboard, and if you're not happy, we'll refund you up to $1 million, which I think says it all. Check it out for yourself at fin.ai.